The room was silent except for the steady rhythm of a heart monitor. Everyone believed billionaire Ethan Blackwood had been trapped inside a coma for nearly 3 weeks after a devastating car accident. His family cried beside his bed. His business partners whispered about replacing him. Lawyers quietly discussed his fortune. Even the doctors believed he couldn't hear a single word, but they were all wrong. Ethan was fully awake. His body refused to move. His eyelids wouldn't open. His lips couldn't speak. Yet every conversation, every lie, every secret reached his ears with painful clarity. And then, late one rainy night, one voice changed everything. The young nurse who had cared for him every single day stepped closer to his bed, took his hand, and confessed something that no one else in the world knew. Before we discover what she whispered to the man everyone thought couldn't hear, take a moment to support our channel. Please like this video, share it with your friends, leave a comment, and subscribe to Kindness of Power for more unforgettable stories. We'd also love to know where you're watching from, so tell us your city and country in the comments below. Now, let's begin. Ethan Blackwood had spent his entire life believing money could solve every problem. By 45, he had built one of the largest investment companies in the country. His mansion overlooked the ocean. His garage held luxury cars worth millions. His private jet waited whenever he wanted to travel. People admired him, people feared him, but almost no one truly loved him. Years of chasing success had cost him friendships, family gatherings, and the woman he once planned to marry. His parents had passed away years earlier, and his younger brother Daniel rarely visited unless he needed another loan. When Ethan's black sports car crashed into a roadside barrier during a storm, the headlines called it a tragedy. Doctors called it miraculous that he survived. His relatives called it unfortunate timing. Within days of his hospitalization, Ethan learned something terrifying, not through sight, not through movement, through hearing. His brother entered the room first. Ethan always thought he was smarter than everyone, Daniel said with a cold laugh. Another voice answered, his attorney. If he doesn't wake up within another month, the board can begin discussing permanent leadership. Daniel sighed dramatically. Honestly, maybe it's better this way. Each sentence struck Ethan harder than the accident itself. The people he trusted weren't praying for his recovery. They were planning their future. Without him, some even sounded relieved. The days became unbearable. Business executives entered, discussing stock prices instead of his health. Distant cousins suddenly appeared after years of silence, asking quiet questions about inheritance. One former friend stood beside his bed only long enough to take a selfie before leaving. Ethan wanted to scream. He wanted to tell them he could hear every selfish word, but his body remained trapped in silence. Then one afternoon, someone new walked into the room. "Good morning?" "Mr. Blackwood," a soft voice said warmly. "My name is Lily Carter. I'll be taking care of you today." Her voice carried something Ethan hadn't heard in weeks. Kindness, not forced politeness, real kindness. She adjusted his blanket carefully, checked every monitor. Made sure the room temperature was comfortable. Then she smiled. "I know everyone thinks you can't hear me, but I still believe people deserve to be spoken to with respect." She began talking while completing her work. Not about his fortune, not about his company, about ordinary life. She described the flowers blooming outside the hospital, windows. She talked about children laughing in the park across the street. She mentioned the beautiful sunrise Ethan had missed that morning. Every shift. She spoke as though he were a friend instead of a patient. Days turned into weeks. Lily never realized Ethan remembered every word. One evening, she entered carrying fresh flowers. "I bought these myself," she whispered, while placing them beside his bed. "Hospitals can feel lonely," she laughed. Quietly, "My supervisor says I'm too attached to my patients." She paused before adding softly, "Maybe she's right." For the first time in years, Ethan felt something beyond ambition. Someone cared. Not because of his wealth, not because of his name, simply because he was human. But outside his room, darker plans continued unfolding. Daniel met secretly with Ethan's financial advisor. If my brother doesn't recover, Daniel asked, how quickly can everything transfer? The advisor hesitated. There are legal procedures. Daniel lowered his voice. I've waited long enough. Every word burned into Ethan's memory. Meanwhile, Lily remained completely unaware of the conversations. Surrounding the hospital, she simply continued showing compassion. She read newspapers aloud so Ethan wouldn't miss current events. She played soft, classical music because she believed it relaxed patience. On weekends, she even brought homemade cookies. Though she knew he couldn't eat them, they make the room smell like home, she said with a smile. 1. Rainy afternoon, Ethan overheard another heartbreaking conversation. 2. Nurses stood outside his door. Poor Lily, one said. She works double shifts because of her father's medical bills, and yet she spends her own money buying flowers for patients. She never keeps anything for herself. Ethan's heart sank. The woman bringing hope into his lonely world was quietly carrying burdens of her own. Still, every morning she arrived smiling, never complaining, never asking anyone for sympathy. Late one night, after the hospital lights dimmed and silence filled the hallway, Lily entered Ethan's room alone. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red from crying. She gently held Ethan's hand. I had a really hard day today, she whispered. I guess I just needed someone to talk to. For several moments, she remained silent. Then she took a deep breath. Know this sounds strange, but talking to you somehow makes me feel less alone. A single tear landed softly on Ethan's hand. He wished with every ounce of strength he possessed that he could squeeze her fingers, that he could tell her she wasn't alone anymore. Instead, he remained perfectly still, listening, waiting. Lily sat beside Ethan's bed, still holding his motionless hand. The hospital hallway outside had fallen silent. Only the soft hum of the air conditioner and the steady beep of the heart monitor filled the room. She looked down at him and whispered, Mr. Blackwood. I know you probably can't hear me. The doctors say you aren't aware of anything around you. But somehow, I still feel like you're listening. A tear rolled down her cheek. My father is dying. The words hung heavily in the quiet room. He needs a heart operation. The doctors say he'll recover if he gets it soon, but I can't afford it. I've worked every extra shift they offer. I sold my mother's jewelry. I even gave up my apartment and moved into a tiny room to save money. She smiled, sadly. But it's still not enough. Ethan felt as if someone had squeezed his heart. Lily wasn't asking him for help. She wasn't hoping for money. She simply needed someone to hear her pain. She continued softly. Sometimes people tell me I should stop caring so much about strangers. They say I'm wasting my kindness. She looked at Ethan. But I don't believe kindness is ever wasted. I've taken care of wealthy people, poor people, famous people, and people nobody ever visited. Underneath everything, they're all just scared human beings. Then she leaned closer. I don't know why, but I hope you wake up. Not because you're rich, because everyone deserves another chance. Those words echoed through Ethan's mind all night. Another chance. For years, he had measured life by profits, investments, and victories. Now, trapped inside his own body, he realized he had almost forgotten what truly mattered. The following morning, Daniel arrived with 2 men in expensive suits. I've already spoken with the board, Daniel said quietly. If Ethan doesn't improve by next week, we'll move forward. One lawyer hesitated. What about his updated will? Daniel smirked. No one knows where the newest copy is. We'll use the older version. Ethan's pulse raced. His newest will donated nearly half of his fortune to children's hospitals and medical charities. The older version left almost everything to Daniel. His brother intended to steal millions. 3 days later, something extraordinary happened. While Lily adjusted Ethan's blanket, she noticed the slightest movement. His finger had twitched. She froze. Mr. Blackwood? Another tiny movement. She immediately called the doctor. Within minutes, specialists rushed into the room. Mr. Blackwood, one physician said loudly, if you can hear us, try moving your hand again. Every ounce of Ethan's strength focused on a single finger. Slowly, painfully, it moved. The room erupted with excitement. Over the next 48 hours, Ethan continued making small improvements. His eyes opened, his breathing strengthened. Eventually, his voice returned as little more than a whisper. The first person he asked to see wasn't his brother. It wasn't his lawyers. It wasn't the board of directors. It was Lily. When she walked into his room, she smiled through tears. "You did it," she whispered. Ethan looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "No," his voice cracked. "You did." Lily looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I heard everything." Her smile faded. "Everything?" He nodded. Every conversation, every visitor, every lie. And he gently squeezed her hand. "Every word you said to me." Lily's face turned bright red. You heard my confession?" "I heard your kindness. I heard your hope. I heard you treating me like a person when everyone else saw only my bank account." Tears filled both their eyes. A week later, Ethan was strong enough to meet with his legal team. Daniel entered confidently, believing his brother remembered nothing. "Ethan!" he exclaimed dramatically. "I've been praying every day for you." Ethan calmly slid a folder across the table. Inside were hospital recordings, witness statements, and security reports confirming Daniel's secret meetings. "I know exactly what you were praying for," Ethan said quietly. Daniel's face turned pale. Within days, he was removed from every position in Ethan's company. The fraudulent inheritance plan collapsed completely. But that wasn't the biggest surprise. 1 month later, Ethan invited Lily and her father to a private meeting. She looked nervous. "I wanted to thank you," Ethan began. "You already have," she replied. "Seeing you recover is enough," he smiled. "No, it isn't." He handed her a folder. Inside was proof that every penny for her father's surgery had been paid. Not as a loan, not as charity, as a gift. Lily stared at the papers in disbelief. "I can't accept this." "Yes, you can. You reminded me that money means nothing if it never changes someone's life." Her father underwent surgery 2 weeks. Later, the operation was successful. Months passed. Ethan gradually returned to work. But he wasn't the same man. He reduced his hours. He sold several luxury properties. He created a charitable foundation that funded emergency surgeries for families who couldn't afford treatment. Every application was reviewed with compassion rather than paperwork alone. When reporters asked what inspired the dramatic change, Ethan simply smiled. "I spent weeks unable to speak. And during that silence, I finally heard what really mattered." As for Lily, she continued nursing with the same gentle heart she had always possessed. The only difference was that now she knew her kindness had reached someone who could never forget it. One sunny afternoon, Ethan visited the hospital, not as a patient, but as a donor. He walked through the same hallway where he had once lain helpless. He stopped beside Lily. "You know," he said, smiling, "people think I survived because of excellent doctors." She laughed. "They weren't excellent?" "They were." He looked at her warmly. "But medicine healed my body. You healed my heart." Lily smiled, tears shining in her eyes. Sometimes the greatest miracle isn't waking up from a coma. Sometimes it's waking up to the kind of person you were always meant to become. And sometimes a few sincere words spoken to someone who cannot answer become the very reason they choose to fight their way back to life. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness of Power. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind us compassion can change lives. And if you haven't already, let us know in the comments, which city and country are you watching from? Because in the end, fortunes may build empires, but kindness builds forever.